Yeah. Oh, hold on, I have words too. Wait a second. Yeah, let's just do this here. Whoop. All right, those are my words. Yeah. Yes, we'll be talking about vagina. Okay, these are my 5 words. What we do is we have 5 words that are in our stories, and so you can kind of keep up with what's going on, and we can also remember what we're talking about. So, the beginning of the story is, see, we're not late. Those are words you do not want to hear. I know I don't want to hear it. It stresses me out because that means we were almost late. Okay, and I don't want to be late. I'm one of those people that likes to be there on time, maybe a little bit early. Right? I don't like feeling gets me stressed out. I get anxiety. I begin to sweat. My heart races. I don't like being late. Now, it didn't work so well for me in my first job. I worked at a place called J. Walter Thompson in Chicago. There you go. So it's an advertising agency, and the agency, every company has a philosophy, an approach with the way they do business. J. Walter Thompson, when you went to a meeting, if you were 10 minutes late, you were on time. That was hard for me because I remember it was my first job. I had a big office. I don't know why they gave me an office, but I had an office, and I remember sitting there thinking, okay, if the meeting's at 2 o'clock, I've got to be there at 2 o'clock. I would leave my office at 5 to 2, and I'd get there at 2 o'clock, and I'd wait for 10 minutes. And for the next probably 6 months, I would just struggle. I'd sit in my office, and I'd be pacing back and forth and going, okay, it's 2:02. All right, it's 2:05. Okay, it's 2:07. I'm going to go now. Inevitably, I'm the first one there, and I'd be waiting for 5 minutes. That's just how it worked. Now, one thing, so I met my wife, and I'll be talking about her tonight. And one thing that I found out pretty early on is that, some people have a really bad sense of direction. You say to them, oh, you're this way or it's that way, or just past the church and make a right, and they're like, wait, which way or what? My wife has that sort of thing with time. She doesn't really understand how time works. The thing is, let me just back up and tell you, she's good at so many things. She's amazing at planning trips and we've gone on so many amazing adventures that she's planned all herself. We've gone to Asia and Europe and all through Central and South America. It is so much fun. She does all the planning herself. We don't use any organizations. She does it all. Same thing with the kids. Everything that we do with the kids is all organized and managed by her, whether it be college applications or planning doctor's appointments or all those things. Everything is managed, but time. Because what happens is she's really good at checking things off her list, but she forgets that list is never ending. And the problem is that she wants to fill every moment of time. So what'll happen is we'll have, time for dinner, and we'll call her, hey, dinner's ready. Okay, I just got to finish this email. And she doesn't realize it's been a long time. So we're all finished with dinner. She comes down, sits down. Or we're going to watch a show together. It's a big thing. Let's all sit together and watch a show. And we'll get there, and we'll all get cozy in the bed and ready to watch the show. And, then she comes up about 10 minutes later, and then I just need to do a couple things. Just give me a few minutes. And then it's like 25 minutes later, everybody sort of disperses. Okay. So I should have known when I first met her, her family said, okay, she's not so good with time. And I sort of began to realize this as I went along. Now, it was 2001. We had just moved to San Francisco. And we are ready to go to a show called The Vagina Monologues. Who remembers that? Anybody remember that? Everybody does here. Okay, we're in Marin, clearly. Okay, so we're going to go see The Vagina Monologues, and this was a show that had no intermission, and you had to be there on time. Because if you were not there on time, they would not let you in, because it was a one-woman show, and she would start and go. So I have tried all those approaches, hey, let's go, tell her that the meeting is going to be a little bit earlier than it is, or, whatever I do, hey, let's get ready, give her a warning, a few minutes. Doesn't work. So we decided that we were going to drive to the play. Now, this is we lived in downtown San Francisco, and we lived on Mason and Green. And it was about a 15-minute walk down to this theater. It was really close. But we wanted to drive because this is the time back in those old days where people would actually dress up to go to theater. And so she was in high heels. I was wearing nice clothes. And so the show was, I don't remember exactly. Let's just say it was at 8 o'clock. So at 7:45, we're pulling out of our driveway. Now, I know how it works. You go to the theater, and especially the theater district in downtown San Francisco, and there is no parking. And as we go down there, of course, inevitably, there's no parking down there by the parking space. We are waiting and driving around in bigger and bigger circles. And as we're going around in these circles, and they're getting wider and wider, the stress is getting to me. I am sweating. My heart is pumping like crazy. I am so stressed. I'm driving like this around the corner. We finally find parking. We park in this place, and I'm telling you, we ended up having to run. I'm talking run, sprinting. She's in her high heels. I don't remember how she did it. We're running down the street trying to get to the theater. I'm sweating. We get there. We run up the stairs. We do an Indiana Jones through the doors. The doors close. People say, okay, we're closing up. We get up there. We run up to our friends. We look at them. We have enough time to say hi. They turn the lights off. We sit down. The show begins. And she turns to me with a beautiful look in her face and says, see, we're not late. I'm over it. I'm over it. And she was here on time tonight, so let's give her a big hand. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much. That was our first story. The next person who's going to be going is Eileen. And Eileen is going to sit down. So let's give a big hand to Eileen. Come up the stage. You want me to angle it down for you? Or?
Yes, please.
Okay, so first I'm going to give you this. You can put that on.
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to sit right here.
Okay. How's that?
Yeah, that works.
Angle it up.
Yep.
Is that good? Okay.
Oh, boy. Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Eileen, take it away.
Okay. I'm young. I'm in my 20s, just getting my feet wet in my career. I'm determined but a little bit naive about the ways of the world and especially about the cutthroat advertising business. But I'm making progress. So I get a job as an art director at this small firm. It doesn't really matter it's a small firm. All that matters is I'm an art director. Now, this job is a couple levels above where I had been working, but I'm making great progress as far as getting lots of samples in my book and solid experience on my resume. So my boss is Bill. Bill is married. I learned very quickly, not happily. He hits on me every day. He tries to kiss me. I try to let him know that I'm not interested. I don't play that way, but I don't want to make him mad. I don't want to lose my job. But he persists. Of course, this is decades before the Me Too movement, as well as sexual harassment laws. And of course, Bill's shop is much too small to have a HR department. So our latest brochure is being printed. We hire a local shop, and Steve, our rep, comes to deliver the brochures in person. He invites us out to lunch at a nice restaurant down the way. So we're shown to a round booth with a red tablecloth, and Bill directs me to slide in, and I do, and he slides in right next to me, sits on my left. Then Steve, the printer, walks around, slides in, he sits on my right. Bill orders martinis for the table, just like in Mad Men. And small talk ensues. We're celebrating the brochure that I designed. It's pretty cool. The waitress comes over and wants to know whether or not we're ready to order. Bill leans forward and says, "We're going to need more martinis with the entree." That's when I feel him place his hand on my left knee. I can't slap it off. I can't make a scene. I don't want to lose my job and embarrass him in front of our vendor. Anyway, so that's when I feel the red tablecloth move, and Steve places his hand on my right knee. And his wedding ring is cold against my skin. I'm paralyzed. I don't know what to do. I mean, again, I can't make a scene, but I don't know what to do. So anyway, so I try to figure out how I can concentrate on the chatter that's happening above the table while thinking about what's happening below the table. It's crazy. I'm paralyzed. I'm so stressed out. My shoulders are tense, and I'm really, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And then, in the meantime, these two guys, they're talking past each other. You know, I'm just the girl in the middle, and they have no idea that they're both on the same mission below the table. So I'm at my wit's end. I can't think of what to say. I can't think of what I could possibly do to diffuse the situation that wouldn't end up embarrassing all of us. And then, just in time, I'm like, maybe I don't have to say anything. Maybe there's something I can do. And then I wonder, what if I very slowly move my knees together? I wonder precisely, exactly when their hairy knuckles would touch.
Great job. Thank you so much. I'll get it.
You got it?
Yeah. Okay, before I have our next storyteller, I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, give it up for Eileen. Fantastic. That was a great story. Sounds like we have a lot of former advertising people here, which is great. I also wanted to just say, in this difficult time that we're in right now, I know a lot of us live in Marin, and this situation with the recent election is kind of challenging, but I'm really happy that everybody's here because this is supposed to be about community, and I want this event to be about community, so I want people to tell their stories and share their stories, and I think this is great. I want to give yourselves a round of applause for being here tonight. Okay. Okay. So we had some people who had to drop out. 3 storytellers were here tonight. We're going to be coming tonight. All three got sick. One had to drive a long way and was sick, and given the weather, she decided not to come. So we have an audible. We have Josh coming up to tell a story. I don't know what the story is about. We're going to see. We're going to see. He's done this before. He's Rebecca's brother. This is Josh. Josh, come on up and let's give it a shot. Something that might be fun to do. All right.
Can I use your words for my story?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's do that.
I think that'll be interesting if I can fit those in. All right, so let me just get this. All right. We'll get your words up there. Okay. Great. Just a little bit higher. Sorry. Yeah, I just want to see the last one. Okay. Okay. Welcome, everyone. So I'm here to tell you a story about my grandfather, Joe, who's passed away. But he was known as what is, or was, or is, a confidence man, or a grifter. He basically told a lot of stories that may or may not have been true. That's the basis of it. And honestly, a lot of family members over time were trying to find out, is that one true? Is that one true? Now, truth, he was married 5 times, twice to a woman named Leona, who later became a Helmsley, by the way, just to kind of give you a context as far as the New York scene that he was a part of. Another quick story before I get to the real meat of it is that he was married to another woman once. The other two were twice. This was only once, and I'll tell you why. Basically, all she ever wanted to do was go on a cruise. That was her big thing. And she smoked a little reefer. So Joe got this idea. He contacted her parents and said, we were in Tijuana, and she got pulled up by the cops, and she's in the Tijuana jail. And the only way to get her out is to send money to the police there. And so the parents, and don't talk about it, she's very embarrassed. So the parents sent him the money. He took her on a cruise. And they said, let's never talk about this again. But sure enough, that next Thanksgiving, they're all sitting around the table and they were eating and relaxing. And finally, the mother turns to her daughter and says, honey, whatever happened to you in that Mexican jail? Now, needless to say, they were divorced soon after. But the real meat, there was a couple of stories that people really wanted to know the truth about. And this one revolves around, in the 40s in New York City, Joe ran a club. I think it was called something like JW Tavern or something like that, where married men and women went to meet other married men and women who were not their own husband and wives. Basically a bit of a swingers club. And at this swingers club, it was supposedly where Joe met one and only Rita Hayworth. And they were not just friends, they were not just dancing partners, but they were lovers, meaning he knew her vagina intimately. And so this story went on, and it had this life of its own. So cut ahead to the late 50s, early 60s. My father's a lounge club singer, and my mother was doing modern dance. So my father would sing, and my mother would come and see him sing at night in the clubs. And sometimes Joe would show up as well and, see his son sing. So my mom and my father are in a club. It's in between sets. And basically, who walks in? Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth walks into the club in high heels with 4 big, muscly, sweaty guys and they go sit in a booth right over there. And basically, it's like Rita and like 4 mean mugging guys, just big, sweaty, nasty looking guys. And my mom is going, I hope Joe shows up. We can finally catch him in one of his lies. Finally. And they're sitting there, and they think it's getting too late. She's gonna leave, but sure enough, Joe walks in. And he sits down at the table with my mom and dad. And my mother cannot contain herself, and she's just elbowing him, like, look over there, look who's over there. Your friend, your lover, your dancing partner, Rita Hayworth. And he's like, no, she's with some friends, I'm not gonna interrupt. Until finally my mother keeps pushing, and he's like, okay, I'll go say hello. So he walks over across the club, and all that you can see is his back blocking Rita, and these 4 muscly, sweaty-looking guys staring up at him, mean mugging him like he is just the most piece of POS in the world. And in the silence between songs, suddenly you hear, Joey! And Rita Hayworth pops up out of the booth and goes arm in arm with Joe, running out of the club, hugging and kissing. And my mom is sitting there pissed off. And my dad is like, what? It's true. One of the things he said was true. Why are you mad? He's like, I'm not mad about that. He didn't even fucking introduce us. That's the problem. But the good thing is that Joe showed up in the nick of time to find out that one of his stories was actually true and not a lie. Thank you. What's that? Oh.
Thank you so much. That's perfect. Okay. Thank you. All right. Wow. Give it up for Josh. Right off the top of his head. Excellent. I love it. So when I was thinking about these Nick of Time stories, I was just thinking about all the times that I've just made it, and I was thinking about this one instance where it was actually a life or death situation. I remember we went to I was in northern France in Brittany. One of my roommates from college had a a place there, and his grandparents had a place there. And I remember we went to this place called the Côte Sauvage, which means the savage coast, right? It says very clear in big letters, do not swim here. People have died here always, every year. And what did we do? Because we were college students, we all went swimming there. And what was the way this thing was shaped? It was sort of shaped like a cove. And on the right side was these jagged rocks, and on the left side were these jagged rocks. And but in the water, it was beautiful. It was great. But there was a rip current. And I found this out kind of in the nick of time, that there was a current, and I was swimming. My friend Sujit and I were both swimming. And I started swimming, because you're supposed to swim with the current to get out of the rip current, but that would go right into the rocks. So I was swimming against the current. And I always thought, I'm a good swimmer. I could do this. This is easy. This is no problem. I mean, I don't understand how people drown. I was getting a little scared, because I was trying really hard to swim against this current and nothing was happening, and I'm going closer and closer to the rocks. And Sujit was only about a few feet in front of me, and just the waves we were going in and going out, and he came in and he just got a kind of a foothold, and he reached his hand out just as I was feeling like I was really going to lose it, and he pulled me in. I was okay. I'm here today. Anyway, that's my second nick of time story. All right, yes. So we are now going to have Falk come up and tell her story. So let's give her a big hand to Falk.
I am a hunter at heart, a mushroom hunter. Well, I guess that makes me more of a gatherer than a hunter. You see, mushroom hunting is imprinted deeply in my DNA. When I tell people about my passion, they often get concerned and they say, what? You go into the woods and you collect mushrooms and you eat them? Aren't you afraid that they are poisonous? I am. And that's why I stay away from the Amanita, a genus that includes the Amanita phalloide, also known as the death cap. Frankly, with a name like that, who would bite into it? But people do every year. You see, mushrooms demand our respect, but they also engender wonder and awe. And my friends often send me pictures of mushrooms that they have found on a busy street or in the dog park. They send me grainy, murky images and they say, look what I found, a mushroom, is it edible? And I answer with the old mushroom hunter joke, yes, every mushroom is edible at least once. You see, this passion for mushrooms for me started very early. My family back in Germany in the fall would take us mushroom hunting out in an area called the Heathers, a rather bleak area with individual birch trees and clumps of lanky and gnarly juniper and pine trees. And I would rush into these stands of pine trees because that's where the mushrooms hid. My father taught me to develop a Pilzauge, also known as a mushroom eye. You see, when you go into the woods, you relax your gaze and you scan the ground for anything, any shape, any color that appears different, or perhaps some needles that stick up, indicating that a mushroom is about to stick his head out of the duft. I cannot tell you the excitement with which I rushed into these woods. Dipping into my competitive nature, my dad actually put up prize money for the family. He was a chef, so he was concerned about edible mushrooms. For the first edible mushroom that a member of my family spotted, there would be 25 cents. Usually that was the slippery jack, a rather unassuming brown capped mushroom with a slimy cap. Edible, but not all that great. Now, if you found a pfifferling, a chanterelle, much more tasty, the prize money would get up to 50 cents. And if you found the tastiest mushroom of all, the porcini, or the King Bolit, in German, the Steinpilz, you would actually get a full German mark, in today's money, about €0.50. I did not need to be incentivized by the money, because, you know, for me, seeing a mushroom is like a rainbow bursting in my soul, in my chest. Seeing a mushroom hide beneath a leaf or nestle in some moist green duft, or standing proudly on the floor of the forest, is the very definition to me of delight. It actually prompts me every time I see a mushroom to utter a sound of delight. Ooh, ah, yay! Not something you want to do when you know, to alert a member of your family, who I shall obliquely refer to as my only sister, comes running up and tramples over the chanterelle that you are just about to pick. Fun times. And to this day, you see, I keep sharpening my Pilzauge, or my mushroom eyes. When I walk the streets, I look down at the sidewalk. I scan the sidewalk, the parking lot, and the area around gas pumps for anything that looks unusual. I have found many a lucky penny, and a dime, and quarters too. But nothing compares to the joy of finding mushrooms. Money does not compare. But you see, we are lucky. We live in Northern California, one of the greatest places for mushrooms on this planet. Now, don't get me started, but I'm going to tell you. There is the California chanterelle, our state mushroom. Beautiful yellow colors and huge in comparison to the tiny chanterelles that I used to find in Germany. And there are tremendous amounts of slippery jacks, all different. And right now, just north of the Russian River, where the fog hugs the California coast, there are porcinis sticking up out of the duft. And even in the Oakland Hills, there are mushrooms to be found. There is the mushroom called the candy cup that smells and tastes like maple syrup and is incredible in desserts such as creme caramel. Yes, I can see it. I can see it in your eyes. You want to know where exactly are these mushrooms to be found. And I have to give you the answer, like every mushroom hunter will: in the woods. Yes, in California, unlike northern Germany, mushrooms grow in the woods. So about a year ago, in January, my posse, my friend Carol, my wife Marta, and I went mushroom hunting. And, you know, it was late in the day, and we hit the mother lode. Hedgehogs, tiny mushrooms about yay big, 3 inches, super tasty, who announced their presence with vibrant colors, hidden underneath dark huckleberry bushes. Poetry in stasis. And we were rushed by the hunt, running into the forest, running into the thickets, climbing under bushes, here, yonder, there, another hedgehog. And it was going on and on and on. It continued on and on. And I was carrying the basket, you know, a must for mushroom hunters, and it was filling up with our bounty, getting fuller and fuller. It was an amazing day. And then I saw my wife coming out of a bush with hair, with grass and leaves sticking all over her hair, saying, "I think that basket is about full, we should go home." And though I hated it, my pants were wet after about crawling 45 minutes on my knees around the forest. And I thought, yeah, probably we should go home. And Carol said, "Okay, where is the trail?" And then it dawned on me. You see, in the heat of the hunt, I had completely lost my bearing. I had no idea where I was. We looked at each other. No one knew where we were, and it was getting dark. Panic began to rise in me. as I thought, oh God, oh no, we have to spend the night in the forest. Will Carol and Martha let me lay in the middle between them because my pants are wet and I'm really, really cold? No, that's not going to happen. We have to get home. We have to get out of here. So, you know, by the fading light of the sun, we knew where west was, and we agreed, okay, the trail is somewhere to the east, the trail that leads back to civilization. So we started moving, you know, through the thicket, moving the branches, bending down under logs and over logs. And finally, Carol yelled at me, use both your hands, drop the mushrooms. Drop the mushrooms. Inconceivable. Who was this person that pretended to be my friend? In that dark forest, with the prospect of having to spend the night, I knew who I was. This is where the wheat separated from the shaft. You see, the danger about mushroom hunting is not poisonous mushrooms or even getting lost in the woods. The true danger of mushroom hunting is turning around and giving your friend a piece of your mind, uncensored. And then, just in the nick of time, my wife called, the trail, it's right there. Thank you so much.
Okay, so here's what's going to happen. We're going to have a quick break. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to pass a hat around, because we had a couple people, like I said, had to drop out. And if anybody decides they want to tell a story, oh, Jules wants to tell a story. Okay, Jules she's got one. Well, then I don't know. Well, you know, we're going to do it anyway. So, yeah, we're going to do it anyway. So I'm going to pick one name out of this hat. So if you choose to do this, we'll pass this around. You guys can also tell a story. So let's take a quick break. Please grab a drink. There's bathrooms back there. And thanks so much. Okay, welcome back to the second half of the Story Slam event. The Fly, thanks for coming. Stands for Factual Life Yarns, by the way. Anyway, we're going to have Rebecca come up and tell her story. So let's give a big hand for Rebecca. All right, Rebecca!
Inside of all of us, there lies a shadow. Sometimes this shadow can be outrun. Once, it came up upon my dad on the highway. He was driving along in the darkest, deepest part of night, and he looked in his rearview mirror, and he saw the man behind his car, reaching for him, grinning at him, grasping towards him. It was all the demons that followed him through his life. And he gunned the gas, he sped up as fast as he can, and he outran that ghoul. But sometimes you can be caught. On the same stupid highway, on a dark, dark night, it caught my brother. And he couldn't run from his despair anymore. And he drove his car directly into a tree. Sometimes you can be caught. Now, when I got sober, I thought I was facing him bravely. I remembered the despair, the incredible agony of living in complete isolation, the feeling that I had invited this figure into my life. I let him sleep in my bed. I let him live in my heart. I let him whisper to me in my own voice and tell me all the lies I needed to hear to make some sort of semblance of all that crazy stuff in my head that I could just not make sense of. And he lived with me, that shadow lived with me for years. Until one day I cast him out, and there was no more shadows, and I lived in light. And it was absolutely beautiful. And years went by. Years went by. Years of just living with complete joy. Until I got sick. I got so sick from that terrible plague that's been going around our planet for the last 4 years. And when it hit me, I didn't even know I had a complication in my body. But it held me down for a month. And again, I lay in my bed. I was completely encased in isolation. All I had were the thoughts in my head telling me, you are worthless. You are nothing. My will absolutely left me. And then for 4 long months, I had no energy, no strength, none of the things that brought me joy. I couldn't do a thing. You don't have to go on a bender to end up in a completely desperate space. You don't have to drink again to suddenly be in a place where you don't even recognize that you've lost your will, that you've invited that figure back into your bed, back into your heart, back into your life, back into your soul. I fell so hard in 4 months. I couldn't even recognize the person I was anymore. And we can fall off our wagons by isolating ourselves, or being hateful to people that love us, or eating every single fucking thing in our kitchen until we can't even recognize ourselves anymore. And slowly, when my strength started to come back, and I could do the thing I loved the most, which was ride my bike in Napa on a Saturday and get up like really intense mileage again. I was riding my bike. I was back out on the highway, and I said, what is that thing? What is that thing we do when we have invited in the one thing we do not want in our life anymore? What the hell is that called? What is that? And I saw him. I saw him. He was on the side of the road, running through the vineyard next to me, jumping up and down over the stalks, through the leaves, laughing at me, pointing at me, going, ha ha ha, I got you again. I totally got you again. And I went, oh, it's you. And I remembered his name, addiction. That's who he is. And all at once, out there on my own personal, dark, lonely highway, I said, absolutely enough. And I moved into complete and total acceptance of everything I cannot control on this world. I cannot control how half the country votes. I cannot control if my body gets sick. I cannot control anything but my own will. And just in the nick of time, I cast out that shadow and I let the light back in. Thank you.
Let's give one more round of applause for Rebecca. That was fantastic. Okay, well now we're going to bring right up Marianne to tell her story, and so let's do that. Welcome, Marianne, everybody. Nope.
No, it's not gonna work.
Let me get you your right thing here. There we go. Okay.
Oh, good. That's helpful.
See that?
I put my hand up to my regulator and my fingers against my mask, and I stepped off the side of the boat and plunged into the water of the Soma Soma Strait in Fiji. I was about to dive the Great White Wall. It was a lifetime event for me. And on this particular day, there were 5 of us. An American father with his 2 teenagers, and a dive master, whom I named Grumpy. A few minutes before the dive, he had sketched out on a dry erase board our dive plan. Now, when you're a diver, it's important to have a dive plan, because you want to make sure everybody's on the same page and that you're not going to be doing anything that you're uncomfortable with. For example, me, I'm kind of claustrophobic. I don't like diving in small dark places like caves and things like that. So we all agreed on the dive plan that we needed to descend very quickly, about 110 feet, before we get to the wall and do a drift dive along the wall. I'm going down with the rest of the group. I'm splashing into the water. I do the OK sign. I release the air from my BC, and I start my descent, and everybody goes down except me. I am not weighted enough. Earlier on the boat, I was handed a black hoodie and some neoprene gloves, and I looked at the dive master, Grumpy, and I said, I think I need more weight because the last few dives I haven't been able to get down, and now with this extra stuff, no, you'll be fine. Well, I wasn't. And the other important thing about diving is that you have a buddy, someone who has their eyes on you and you have your eyes on them, right? Well, there were 5 of us, so somebody was the odd man out. That was me. I didn't have a buddy. So Grumpy was my buddy by default. Luckily, he did notice that I wasn't down with the rest of the group, so he came back up and took a weight out of his pocket and stuck it into mine and pulled me down with him. And in his urgency, he knocked my mask and it started to leak. Now, divers are used to this leaky mask thing. You kind of just lift the mask up, you blow in some air, and then, reassemble it and go on your way. But we had to do this fast. So there was no time to do it very well as we're descending. And we finally get up with the dad and his teens. We gather together, and I look at my depth gauge, which is hanging off my BC, and I see it's faulty, it's flashing. Because I went down and went back up again, it didn't reset properly. So I show this to Grumpy, and he gives me this annoyed eye roll through his mask, and tells me to stay on his right side so I can sort of catch his depth gauge every so often. I'm like, great, okay. So I start swimming next to him, but he's got these extra long fins, so one swoop of his leg, he's like, whoosh, way ahead. And so I'm doing twice time, trying to keep up with him. Finally, we get to the crest of the land, and we see the wall fall away from below us, and it's absolutely stunning. It goes down for miles and miles into the deep dark, but the wall is full of these beautiful, blooming, soft corals, waving in rainbow colors, with these little things unfurling. And we descend down and start swimming alongside, and the current just yanks us along. And we are whipping by, and we see these fans and all kinds of, it's gorgeous. But we cannot touch anything. We cannot hold ourselves in place because we will kill something. It's so fragile. Now, the teenagers are having a heck of a time because the thing's whipping fast. So they're grabbing onto their dad, and the dad's like, I can't do this. And finally, Grumpy's like, we're aborting the dive plan. So he cuts in, and we go up, and we come across a plateau with just sand and rocks, and the beautiful wall is left behind. And Grumpy just keeps swimming, and we follow him. And then he goes into this cluster of rocks, into a thing that kind of looks like a cave. And we wait, because he doesn't signal to us to follow him. So we think, oh, he's going to get a reef shark and scare it, and he's going to come out, right? Or maybe a sea turtle. Well, he never comes out. And the bubbles get smaller and smaller, and the father and I look at each other, and then he signals to his kids to, let's go in. And after I see the last fin flip away, I realize, I have to go into the cave. And I have my freaking panic attack there, somewhere between 100 and 120 feet. I decide it would be a really good idea to take out my regulator and rip off my mask and just shoot up to the surface. And that's kind of got a bad after effect. I don't think I was going to do it, but for a moment it really felt like the right thing to do. But then I realized they told us a story on the dive boat that there was a man who had gotten separated from his group the week before, and he had to spend the night out in the ocean and was luckily picked up the next day. So I'm like, yeah, I could make it to the top, but there won't be a dive boat waiting for me, and I could get sucked back to sea, so unless I don't get an embolism. So maybe I won't do that. My next option is to go into the cave. So I create this affirmation in my head that says, right now, in this moment, I'm okay. Right now, in this moment, I'm okay. Right now, in this moment, I'm okay. Right now, you get the idea, right? So I say this to myself as I slowly start fluttering myself into the cave, one fin at a time. My heart is banging. My tank is scratching along the top of the cave, and it gets smaller and tighter, and I'm getting just sweating, freaking out. And then I see the cave splits into 2 tunnels, left and right. What do I do? Left goes down a bit more, and at this point I don't know how deep I am. I don't know what my decompression times are going to be. So I decide maybe I should go right because it's going up. And this decision probably saved my life. So I go right, and I start coming to the end of the tunnel. I see some light, and I see little black figures swimming off in the distance. I'm like, divers, great! So I start swimming, and I notice I have almost no air left. So I'm like, I gotta get there. And I catch up with the group, and there are 5 people. But I'm the 5th person. How can this possibly be? I'm the 5th. And I show up, and I grab Grumpy, and he looks at me in shock. And I show him how I have almost no air. And he hands me his extra regulator, so we start buddy breathing. And I'm like, what happened? And he looks at this other person with a hood on, and we realize that other woman got separated from her group and drifted over to ours. So he didn't even know I was missing.
Oh, God.
So I probably wouldn't have made it. But luckily, I'm here to tell the story, and we made it to the top just in the nick of time.
Well done. Nice. Okay, that's terrifying. I'm sorry. That is like my biggest fear, to be stuck underwater and have no air. I've had like nightmares about that. So okay. Anyway. Now you know what we are. I think this is a good time to see who put their name in the hat. So we're going to pick out one name because we have 2 more storytellers. We're going to pick out one name. If your name is up here, then you're going to be the one that tells the story. And we're going to have Ken. Ken. Let's have Ken come up and tell the story. All right, let's hear it. Ken. Good luck. Put this on you. There you go. Ken! Ken, get up for Ken!
Thanks, guys. So, if you're lucky like me, you have a best cousin. My best cousin is Steve. Steve and I were competitive our whole lives, and Steve is very adventurous. And he's particularly known for his misadventures, but he's a big guy, and he's strong, and he has a big appetite. And when we graduated from college, we came up with this idea. We were going to sail his family's 14-foot sailboat from Sacramento to Foster City. Okay, that's pretty ambitious for such a small boat, and we didn't have a lot of experience. So, after a little consideration and talking to some people, and we're not stupid. I mean, we were college graduates after all, so we decided we'd only go from Sacramento to Rio Vista, okay, down the Sacramento River. So a few days after graduation, I'm staying over at Steve's house because we're going to get up really early to go to the river. And he wakes me up in the middle of the night and he says, Ken, he says, it's early April, the river's really high, and if we're there and they can't open the bridges for us, like they haven't started work yet, they haven't got to the bridge booths and they're not there to open the bridges, then we're going to have to do an emergency procedure. Okay, so I said, well, what's that? He says, you're going to sit on the edge of the boat and you're going to grab the halyard, the cable that holds the mast, and you're going to pull it over as hard as you can. And I'm going to hold the rudder, and we're going to tip the boat over, and we're going to sail under the bridge, so we don't catch the mast in the ironworks of the bridge, and go in the drink. I say, okay, well, that's what we'll do. So we get down to where the American empties into the Sacramento, and we put the boat in the morning, and we said, okay, we have like 30 minutes before the bridge is available to be opened. So we'll just like sail back and forth here for a while until it's time we can open the bridge. Which is a good plan, except, the wind doesn't necessarily know the plan, and the current doesn't know the plan, so we start drifting down and we're getting closer and closer to the I Street Bridge. So Steve calls out, "Emergency procedure." So I get on the edge of the boat, I pull it over, and we tip over, and I'm looking up, and I see the top of the mast just, drifting under the ironwork. It says, "But we made it, right?" It says, "All right, that was close." So now we're between the I Street Bridge and the Tower Bridge, and it's still a long time before the bridge is open. So, and the Sacramento is a strong river, and the wind doesn't cooperate, and we sail around a little more, and then it's like, nope, the current's going to take us back under there. We have no wind, no control of the boat. So, emergency procedure number 2, and this one, the Tower Bridge is even lower. So we're pulling over, and we just make it. So now it's a long way until bridge number 3. So, we learned that if you want the bridge to be opened, you have a little air horn, and you blast it 3 times, and then they'll open the bridge for you. And we're sailing down around and down the river, and suddenly I hear this. And Steve starts yelling, What? I'm cold. And he had been leaning over the air horn in his pocket, and it had broken the nozzle of the air horn. It was all leaking out in his pocket. So it says, so that was it for the horn. It says, so we get to the 3rd bridge, and we say, well, we better tie up, and we'll go talk to the bridge operators and tell them we're coming. So we tied up, we had our lunch, and we talked to the bridge operators, and they said, "Oh, are you the guys in that little dinghy down there?" And we said, "Yeah, that's us." So they opened the bridge for us, we go through. Now, bridge number 4 is at Walnut Grove, okay? Walnut Grove has like a horseshoe in the river, right where the bridge is. And we had learned from the bridge operators that, well, if you don't have a horn, you waggle your boat back and forth, so they'll know to open the bridge for you. So we get to the Walnut Grove Bridge, and we waggle the boat back and forth, and they open the bridge, and all the traffic has to stop. And we go down through, and now we're on a very straight stretch past once we get around the horseshoe. But now we're getting toward Rio Vista, and the winds are really picking up. These are delta winds, right? And it's just really hard for us to control the boat. And Steve's getting really tired because he's doing, a lot of work with the tiller, and we're having to jibe back and forth. And so he says, "Ken, we got to go back. We can't make it any farther." So we turn the boat around, and we're going back up, against the current. And we get back to this horseshoe, and we get to the Walnut Grove Bridge, and they see it. We don't even have to waggle this time, and they see us, and they open the bridge. Only one little problem. Right at that horseshoe, it blocks out the wind. So we get going up toward the bridge, and it's waiting there open for us. And we get to the bridge, and then no more wind, and the current starts bringing us back. And the bridge is still open. And we go, and so we try, okay, we got to get more momentum. And we try to catch as much wind as we can, and we go up close to it, and we drift back. And I really lost count how many times we did this while, the population of Walnut Grove is waiting for us to get this boat through. And so finally we get as close to the levee as we can, and we're able to catch a little bit of wind and just barely go through. And it was such a moment of resolve and joy to make it through. And we tie up on the little dock, and we go up into Walnut Grove, and it's a little tiny walk to the town of Locke right next door. And we go into a Chinese place for dinner, and we're sitting there, the Chinese food comes, and I look at Steve, and he's just sitting there like with his fork like this. And I say, Steve, what's wrong? He says, I'm too tired to eat. Thank you. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you so much. Wow, Ken, bring it in. Well done for Ken. Big hand for Ken. Okay, we have two more storytellers. Susan is going to go last because she has a great story she's told us, so no pressure. But Jules, are you ready to come tell a story? She is. This is Jules, everybody. Big hand for Jules. I like your jumpsuit.
Thank you.
Jules.
Hi, how you doing? It's a little on the fly because I just agreed to do it like 10 minutes ago. But I have a story for you. And it's from a few years ago, pandemic. I think it was the year of the pandemic. And my two sons and I were living in a house just down Shoreline. And it was we had a fabulous little 3-bedroom house. And then on the property, there's like a separate little unit where my neighbors lived, a couple and their 2 small kids. And that's how we were. And every year, it was we were renting at the time, and every year the owners would send us a note saying, hey, next month, certain date, we're going to come by and just do the annual walkthrough and just check the property and make sure that, nothing's falling apart or the roof's not leaking or stuff like that. And whenever it happened, it sent us into like turmoil because I'm not the tidiest household. We're not. And my house is always pretty crazy. We've got 2 dogs, a cat, 2 sons. So it's living in a frat house. And so we would then spend like the weekend cleaning like crazy, organizing, tidying before anyone could come before the owners could come in the house. And this particular weekend, it was a Monday. And I think they were coming the next day. And of course, we'd left it to the last minute, and I'm running around scrambling. And it was one of those rare days in Mill Valley where it was like 1,000 degrees hot. And the last thing I wanted to be doing was cleaning and tidying. And I'm one of those people that scrub in the bath and cursing out anyone that's ever crossed me in their life, because I'm just like, I hate cleaning. And part of the problem is I leave it so long that by the time I do have to do it, it's a disaster. So I'm frantically cleaning, and I see my neighbor out the back, and he's frantically cleaning too. So we're all in this mode where we're cleaning and tidying and organizing, and I'm probably yelling at my kids to put this away, do this, clean the yard, do this, so forth. And we're getting it cleaned. And one little detail is I am notorious for missing meals. It's not on my radar to remember to eat. And I had completely not eaten this day. And I'm feeling like crazy. And I decide I want a sneaky gin and tonic. And the danger of making gin and tonics at home is that, gin, tonic. And so I'm all proud of myself. I'm cleaning and I'm having my gin and tonic. And it's getting hotter and hotter outside. And then all of a sudden, there's a knock on my door. And it's my neighbor. And he's come over, and he has like blood all down his leg. And he was up a ladder cleaning some part of his house. I don't know where. He was in the backyard or something. And he'd fallen and smashed onto like a glass jar or something and had this big gash in his leg and needed to be driven to the hospital. And I'm like, sure, absolutely. Of course, I'll take you to the hospital. Let's get you seen. So I grab my car keys and I grab the car and everything. And I'm driving him up to the hospital. And I get into the hospital. And in San Rafael, it's 2,000 degrees because it's so much hotter there. And it was during the pandemic. And we had to go register him or whatever. And then we had to wait outside because they only let no one in the waiting room or whatever. So there's all these people in little clusters waiting. And so we're waiting outside, and the heat is just like boring down on us. And I'm really trying not to faint and pass out. Because of course, I've not eaten anything. I had a big fat gin and tonic before driving, which I'd totally forgotten about, and then I'm driving. And here I am in the heat and the tarmac and everything. And I'd left in such a hurry that I don't even think I had any water. I don't even know what I had. So my neighbor's waiting. He's waiting to be seen, and we're waiting, and I'm trying to, like, you know, and I had done like I'd wrapped something around his leg or something anyway. So I'm like, I gotta go to the car and find some water. So I head off trying to find some water, but I don't make it to the car. Somewhere along the line, I completely pass out, collapse, fall over, and I'm aware of me crawling across the tarmac to try and get to my car. And it's all a bit hazy. And then I hear this guy like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, water, water. I just need water. And he's, well, where's the water? I was like, in my car. And I just randomly give over my car keys to this complete stranger. Need my water. And he was like, well, which car? And I was like, just push the button. So he goes off, and I'm literally crawling across the tarmac. And I try and make it to my feet. I can't make it to my feet. And then I'm like, got my head in, and then eventually, some guys, some nurses or someone come up, and they're like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, just water, get me water. And then I'm like, I'm fine. I'm meant to be sitting here, and I'm finally sitting, and I'm just sitting in the middle of the whole parking lot and everything. And everyone's watching this show. And I'm like, I just need water, I'm fine. And then the guy comes back with some water and my car keys. And the nurses or whoever grab the car keys and like, you won't be needing them because you're obviously not driving anywhere anytime soon. And I'm like, I'm fine, I'm not gonna drive. So they put me on a gurney, and I'm now laying on this gurney, and I'm like passing in and out and stuff. And so they're wheeling me down, and there's my neighbor, and he's like, what the? And I'm like, hi, sorry. And there was all these people in these little pockets, and they were all waiting to be seen. But I jumped the line because as soon as someone passes out or faints, or there's like a head relate, you know, if it involves something to do with the head or the heart or whatever, I didn't know this, it immediately puts you in the front of the line at the emergency room. So all these people are like, they saw me walk off, and then I'm crawling around on the parking lot. And then I get wheeled in, and I'm in the parking lot. I mean, not in the parking lot. They wheel me in, and they take me straight through, and they're doing all these tests and everything. And every single person that walks in the room, it's like, what is that smell? What is that smell going on in here? And when I'd fallen over and collapsed, I didn't register at the time. I had managed to fall in these huge bushes of rosemary, and I now reeked of rosemary. And I'm in the room, and everyone is like, everyone that walks in, and it becomes comical, they're like, oh, it smells of rosemary. What's that? Is that essential oils? And I was like, nope, it's just me. It's just me, and I stink of rosemary. And everyone's like, whoa, it's a lot better than some of the things that we smell on people when they come in here and so forth. So anyway, they hydrate me. They give me 2 big fat liters of saline or water or whatever, and they get me, and my neighbor's still not being seen, by the way, and I'm being seen. And I'm messaging my boys, and I'm like, you're gonna have to come get me, because they're not gonna let me drive home. And they're like, Mom, what have you done now? What's going on? So my boys, they come and get me. My neighbor gets seen eventually, and then he ends up having to take, I think he finds his own way home eventually, because he gets out, I don't even know, I don't remember him. We just totally deserted him, I think. And then, yeah, so my boys drive me home, and then we get the house cleaned up and everything, and then they canceled the visit, and I wrote to them and said, you have no idea what me and the neighbors went through for this cleanup. We both ended up in hospital, we both ended up in the emergency room, and then you went and canceled. But we were delighted they were canceled. And that's my story. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well done. All right. We've had lots of great stories here tonight. Let's just, everybody just give a big, everybody, get some energy. Here we go. We're going to bring up Susan up here. She's going to tell the best story of the night. No pressure. Here we go. Let me get your words up there. Good
All
luck.
right. I don't know how to put this on. Okay. Hello. So I'm here to tell you about why I'm always late. When I was a kid, my family, we were always late for everything. I remember once my dad was so late paying the electricity bill that they shut off our electricity, and we had to run an extension cord from Mrs. Nadelson's apartment next door just to get electricity until he paid. And another time, we were so late to my uncle's funeral that by the time we got there, everyone was actually gone, except my uncle, of course. We were late all the time. And this one particular time that we were late was the most dramatic of all, and I think it really explains a lot about why I'm late today. We didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up. We weren't like, we were making ends meet, but we definitely did not have a lot of money. We didn't go on vacations, but we did fly to Vancouver a few times to visit my mom's family, because we lived in New York, and it's pretty far. So we flew there, and we were always late to the airport, super stressful. And one year I was 5, and we were in Vancouver, and we were getting ready to go back home, and of course we were monumentally late. And I remember how stressed out my mom was. We got to the airport, dropped off our luggage at the ticket counter, and we just took off running to the gate. And it looked like we were gonna miss the flight. And you know, I was 5, I was tiny, I was working really hard to keep up with my parents. I don't know if you remember ever being in like a really big hurry with adults and being really little, but it is really hard to keep up with them. And we're like running through the airport, my parents are yelling at each other, they're like yelling at me, I'm freaking out, we're running, we're totally stressed. We finally get up to the gate, and the door is still open. And the person's at the counter, and we're like, okay, we made it. And we come up to the gate counter, and the gate agent is like, oh, well, you guys are really late. We actually gave your seats away. So my parents are just looking at each other. We're all devastated. And I'm like tiny, I'm like looking up at the woman, and I'm just looking at my parents, and I'm like, oh my God, this is really bad. What are we gonna do? And I'm like starting to cry. My mom's starting to cry. And the gate agent just looks at us, and she's kind of takes pity on us, I guess, and she starts looking at some papers and stuff. And then she says, well, you know what? I've got 3 seats in first class. I'm gonna put you in there. So this is 1975. And by the way, this is the one and only time in my life I flew first class. And it was the single greatest experience of my childhood. It was a miracle. It was like we went from being in the depths of despair to the gates of heaven opening. And we walk on this plane, and it is like we are royalty. I mean, first class in the 70s is another thing altogether. And I'm 5 years old. You know, we don't live a fancy lifestyle. We walk on this plane. There's, you know, the stewardess with like her little hat, right? And we have these like big seats. She shows us to our seats, and she brings us warm towels, you know, to wipe off all the sweat from running across the entire airport. And she's like, oh, would you like some soda, little girl? Like, what would you like? And she brings me like a glass with ice and like a soda, and I'm drinking it. And she's like offering my parents champagne, and they have it like in the bucket with ice, like a bottle of champagne, and they like pour it into actual champagne flutes. And you know, we're just sitting there. I mean, honestly, it was unbelievable. And my eyes are like huge. And then after the plane takes off, it only gets better from there. Like They bust out the actual tablecloths that they're putting over our little trays. They bring out like china and silverware, and they have like, they start the meal service, so they have these like little salads with like croutons, and they like bring them to us, you know, and they're like, oh, would you like some wine? And they're like showing my parents like different bottles of wine, like not those little plastic things in the cart, like an actual bottle of wine, and they have like the napkin over their arm, and they're pouring wine, and you know, they ask me what I would like for my meal, so I choose the beef. So next thing I know, they wheel this cart through the aisle with a huge roast on it. And the stewardess pulls out like a giant carving knife and is like, oh, which part of the beef would you like? And she's slicing the beef for me onto my, you know, plate, whatever, my china plate. And, you know, there's like different side dishes, and then she's bringing us more drinks. She's like, oh, would you like some crayons? Would you like a toy? Would you like a magazine? I mean, it was just unbelievable. And then just when I think it can't get any better, it's time for dessert. So out comes the dessert cart. And it's got cakes and pies, and like, I can tell them which one I want, and they serve it to me. And like, it was, honestly, it was really the most incredible experience I had ever had in my life. Maybe still until today. It was just one of those, you know, seminal moments in your life that just always sticks with you. I mean, my parents and I still talk about this, and my sister wasn't born yet, and she's like, I can't believe this happened before I was born. We still talk about it. And, you know, I kind of realized, like, it reinforced being late, right? It was like the worst possible behavioral intervention you could give a child, okay? And not only was it like we were so late and then we got the world's biggest reward, but like if you study behavioral psychology, intermittent reinforcement is the most effective, okay? So like if you reward a behavior every time it happens, like, you know, that kind of works. But if you intermittently and randomly give a big reward, like for example, a slot machine, that really reinforces the behavior. So looking back on that, I realized like, oh, that's why I'm late all the time. So next time you're waiting for me at a restaurant and I'm late, just remember, don't blame me, blame Air Canada.
All right, well, that was Susan, everybody. It was Susan. All right, everybody. Well, that concludes our sixth fly. Thank you all so much for coming here tonight. This was so great. We're having another one on December 14th, and we'll be the theme of that night will be Leap of Faith. Leap of Faith. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everyone. Storytellers. Well done, everybody. Thank you.